Hey there, my name is Cole Adams, and you are watching the best college basketball podcast out there that covers the entire sport of college basketball, brackets, bubbles, and bid stealers. Now, here are your hosts, Sam Fetterman and Jonathan Lidskin.
Season 6, Episode 2 of Brackets, Bubbles, and Bid Stealers. I am Sam Fetterman. That is Jonathan Lidskin. Jonathan, how are you doing tonight?
Could be a little better. No, a lot of thinking from me in the last, I don't know, hour or so. But right now we're watching a Wardell Stephen Curry masterclass. So
I know you watched WrestleMania tonight. Did
I
that
did.
go how you wanted it to go?
Really good. Second night of Mania, except for the ending. I compare it to you're watching a TV show and has a disappointing season finale after it's
Okay.
hyped up to be very good.
Okay. So what I'm going to do, in this episode, Jonathan and I are going to go over all of the mid-major coaching changes that have already happened. We still don't know who's getting UC Riverside. They have to do that at some point, don't they? Like
You would think.
363 teams have a head coach. They don't.
Yeah, you would think.
Yeah, I think they would have to at some point make up their mind, get their head coach in there. But I'm gonna start this off because I just kind of made like a quick mock up to your list that I'm not gonna go off of for most of the show, but I kind of just tiered the hires in a bunch of different ways, and there are 3 hires that I thought were clearly, for me, the 3 best mid-major coaching hires of the cycle.
Okay.
Do you want to guess the first one, or guess any of them?
I'll say that.
I'm just gonna do it. I'm just gonna do
Okay.
it.
Okay.
Okay.
I have a pretty good idea, I think.
All right, and this is in no particular order, by the way. There's no order for these. But the first one that I want to talk about is New Mexico hiring UC San Diego head coach Eric Olin. You probably expected that one, Jonathan. Olin is only 44 years old. He was the head coach at UC San Diego for over a decade. He was tremendous when they were in D2. He won 3 conference titles. They were 30-1 the COVID year. They were gonna make a deep run in that tournament, and then they make the transition to Division I. It takes a little bit of time to really get going, but in year 4, they break out. They go 15-5 in the conference. This year, they obviously win the league. I think he has a very very translatable style of game. The way that they control the game, the way that they're able to force turnovers, take care of the basketball. Obviously, the way that they like to trap anything inside the arc at UC San Diego and kind of force difficult shots. Obviously, you're not going to have Aniwa Tate Jones coming with you. So it might be a little more difficult to get started than it was this past year and these past 2 seasons at UC San Diego. But I think it could take a year or 2 for things to really get rolling for Olin, because I think that they were going to take a step back at UC San Diego anyway. But I think he has the coaching chops. He's won almost 70% of his games, almost 70% of his conference games. Had that meteoric rise in the last 2 seasons in the Big West. Was one of the most impressive coaches all season this year. Took Dusty May to the another one of my favorite coaches in the country to the absolute wire when his guys were completely outmatched for the first 10 minutes of that game. I think he's shown a lot of good in-game coaching. A lot of good roster building and play and talent identification. A lot of those guys that he brought to the tournament last year at UC San Diego were guys that came Division II or international. So really impressive stuff. And they kind of blazed through a really good Big West at 18-2 this year. It's not just based on this one year, though. It was building towards this. Obviously, after the 15-5 season, you lose Jordan Pope. Bryce Pope, but you get Tate Jones to step up. You get Magai to step up. You get Hayden Gray to continue stepping up. And again, I think it's going to take a little bit longer than a year, maybe two. It could take 3 years to really get rolling at New Mexico. But that's a program that has more than enough of what it takes to compete at their level and excel at their level. And they're going to be in the Mountain West when the Mountain West is a little bit watered down. And I think they'll absolutely be able to continue to compete for tournaments, even in the watered down Mountain West when that eventually comes to it. So Eric Olin, I don't know if New Mexico could have made a better hire. Successful coach in the western part of the country. Still very young. Talent evaluation is excellent. In-game coaching is excellent. I love the schematics. So I think he's really the triple threat in that sense. And obviously, yeah, as I mentioned, he's young. Like, he's 44. He doesn't 45 until October. He's actually not from that part of the country. He's from Alabama, and it's tough to get guys that have ties to New Mexico, like if they haven't already coached at New Mexico or something like that. Obviously, there's a lot of JUCOs or D2s down there, but it's tough to get like an elite coach that has ties to New Mexico. So I'm not going to punish them for not getting a coach with ties to New Mexico, and I try not to punish for not getting a coach with ties to the certain place. I think that at least at this level, like the high mid-major level, you don't need necessarily. And it's not like New Mexico is generating all this talent anyway, so I don't think it's the biggest deal that Olin does not have ties there.
Yeah, it's hard to disagree with anything you said. I mean, he built that program up at the Division II level and ended up going 30-1 in UC San Diego's final D2 season before the tournament was canceled. And then, he has to deal with the transition to D1 at the same time that COVID is going on. So yeah, and he built the program back up at the D1 level, and they finished top 40 in KenPom. So I think he's a really good coach. I like what he does schematically, like you said, Sam. And yeah, New Mexico kind of has shown that they have the resources to get players to be competitive and win big in the Mountain West Conference. I think it's a spectacular hire. I think the guy can really coach. And I'm not at all surprised that he was one of your three.
I think this is one of the schools that upgraded their coach. Lost their coach to a better job, but upgraded regardless. I don't think I can. I'm not sure if I think this next school upgraded, but when I heard this name like in contention for this job, it didn't like necessarily shock me, but it made me look twice, because I think that this coach has been successful at multiple stops, had a really good thing going, and it's not like super obvious to me in the Northeast that this was that this is a significantly big enough jump to have a guy leave where he's at to go to this next spot. But Lenny Acuff going from Lipscomb to Samford,
that would not have been one of my guesses. So
I don't think Samford could have made anything close to a better hire than that. Like, sure, you will definitely get the doubt that he's old. Like, he's not a young coach at this point in time. He's 60 years old, but the ties that he has in the state of Alabama allow him to feel comfortable moving from Nashville back to the state of Alabama, leaving a good thing that he had going at Lipscomb. Lipscomb's had a good thing going. He won 20 games each of the last 3 years, 25 this year, and made the NCAA tournament. I think he's one of the most well-respected head coaches in the Southeast in terms of just his resume at the D2 level at Alabama Huntsville, where he was incredibly successful. And that program has continued to be successful since he left. So I think that that's impressive from him there at UAH. And then obviously what he did at Lipscomb, he finished third in his first 2 seasons and second and first in the last 2 seasons. So the fact that he was also able to do this, able to retain and develop talent through the years as well. Will Pruitt, Jacob Ognasevich, he did a really good job bringing him in and then developing him into the player that he became. And then obviously with Pruitt staying all 5 years at Lipscomb with Acuff. Acuff was there for 6 years, but the fact that they were able to get a guy to stay in this climate, I think that he's also, again, as I mentioned, really, really sharp offensive mind. The KenPom numbers don't jump off the page, but you're going to be hard pressed to find a guy that's more well respected and more experienced in that area of the country at all levels of the sport, and just really, really sharp coach as well. I think Sanford, I can't, maybe the guy that's coaching at UAH right now is really young, and it looks like he'll have a really good coaching career. But this is a successful Division I head coach who just made the NCAA tournament, who just won his conference, just won 25 games, who has serious ties to your state, lived in your state for a very, very long time, will help kind of continue to build that culture that Bucky McMillan was building, where it resonated with Alabama and it resonated with Birmingham. Obviously, Acuff's from Huntsville, a little bit different, but it'll still really resonate with the people there. And it's hard to get a guy who's been that successful at multiple levels of the sport. It's a really, really good hire.
Yeah, another guy that can just, coach. We talk all the time about how there are good coaches everywhere. No matter kind of what level that they're at, and Lenny Acuff's a good example of that. He spent a lot of time at Alabama Huntsville and won a lot of games there, and then he takes over at Lipscomb, comes in, they win. He's there for 6 years. They win 20 games 3 times, 25 this year. He finished with a winning record every year in the conference except for one. So, yeah, he just has won at every single stage of his career, and he's 60 years old. Sanford hired late in the cycle. So, maybe hiring a coach who can come in and sort of, continue what they had going there for 5-10 years, however long he decides to coach, not the worst idea. They got a complete rebuild to do, but as we kind of saw at Lipscomb, Lenny again, took that program, started off, around a 500 level overall, right at 500 in conference, but a little better, and worked his way up pretty quickly.
That's also a program. I think also hiring a guy like Lenny Acuff, especially in that region of the country, is a statement of intent that the last hire that they made was really outside the box. And it ended up working. But here's Sanford. Sanford means business. That's going to be you got to pay up if you're going to hire a successful D1 head coach like that. I don't know what the contract was, what the buyout was, but clearly Sanford is operating at a high level financially for that league, I mean, you just look at the size of what Bucky McMillan had on his staff last year. He had a huge staff. I don't know how big Acuff's staff is going to be or is, but Samford is in a really good spot right now with Acuff. And then the third hire that I thought was the third hire, again in no order, that I put on the tier of the best mid-major hires of this cycle. South Florida hiring Brian Hodgson. This is a guy that seems destined for a high major coaching job someday. So maybe it's not as good of a hire as it sounds, because he's probably going to keep climbing the ladder. But just the fact that they were able to hire him when it seems like he would have been a shoo-in at a bunch of different high major spots. It's lucky for South Florida that no SEC jobs opened in this cycle, because he would have been a big name at any of the aside from Texas A&M, which opened after South Florida was already filled. So, and it seems like they beat out UNLV, I think it was, to get him, and I think that's a really, really good sign for South Florida, who just recently made an incredible hire in Amir Abdur-Rahim, who is kind of in a similar position, a good assistant, a good assistant, spent a couple years as a head coach, really built up a program, came over, brought some of his guys over, and had a really successful year one at South Florida, and would have had another really successful year had he not tragically passed before last season, because he's just that good of a coach. Brian Hodgson, 38 years old, is bringing a couple of his guys with him from Arkansas State, recruits at an incredibly high level. I think that was also one thing that Amir did really well. He was, I think, the lead recruiter on Anthony Edwards at Georgia, if I recall correctly. But Hodgson is an excellent recruiter, thinks in a very modern way, coming off the Nate Oates tree, has been a successful head coach, 25 wins this past year, finished in that four-way tie at the top of the Sun Belt. 20 wins in his first year at Arkansas State, and they were clearly building towards something. They had some really, really good rosters there. He did a really, really good job with those rosters. And he's a guy that had really grinded. He was an assistant at like D3 and JUCO schools in New York, and then he was a JUCO assistant in Texas, and he went to be on Nate Oates' staff. He was there at Buffalo. He was there at Alabama. He's really grinded through a lot of different levels of the game, and he was one of the top assistant coaches in the country when he was at Alabama, and he was one of the top young head coaches at Arkansas State. I think that'll continue at South Florida, however long he stays there. If he wants to stay in South, and he also he hired Tobin Anderson as an assistant, which, like, that would be a move that, like, if you want to get an experienced head coach on your staff, there probably wasn't a better name out there, like, that was without a job than Tobin Anderson. As far as I can tell, maybe there's one that I'm forgetting, but you get an experienced head coach on your staff. You beat out high major programs that wanted to have him on their staff. And I think that's kind of another statement of intent here for Brian Hodgson for South Florida. I think this is going to be a program to watch out for. A couple of really, really good hires in a row by that athletic department, and this one is really good.
Yeah, I think that Brian Hodgson was a guy who, when he was even an assistant at Alabama, everyone knew that he was going to be a really good coach in this sport for a long time. And I think he's only going to continue to work his way up, which is, kind of what you said to start this thing. But there's a lot of, like, Nate Oates-esque things that he does from a program standpoint, play fast, shoot threes, but he has, like, his own wrinkles as well as any assistant becoming a head coach will. But yeah, I think the best thing that Brian Hodgson does is he IDs and is able to recruit talent way higher than the levels that he has been at in the last 2 seasons, and now third coming up in South Florida. Like the roster that he has already put together for next season with retention from that South Florida team. Bringing in his own guys from Arkansas State who were really good last year, and then bringing guys in who probably could play at a high major level if they really wanted to. But yeah, he's great. I expected to hear his name on your top 3, so I think he's going to do really well at South Florida. Like, wouldn't surprise me at all looking at this roster if they won the conference next year.
What other names do you think could have been in my tier of the best hires?
The third one I was going to throw out was Kevin Hovde, actually.
Yeah, that's fair. I think there's a clear difference between Hovde and the 3 that I named. Successful as a head coach.
Yeah, head coaching experience.
Like, I think Hovde can be a really, really good coach, and I think he will be a good coach. And I think that's a really difficult place to be good. So the standards there are probably a lot lower than what the other opening in that league is going to be dealing with, especially considering the profile of hire that was made there versus at Columbia. We'll kind of get into that. I do want to kind of compare and contrast those two, but you look at what all 3 of these coaches bring in, it's success at a high level in like, obviously Hodgson didn't make the NCAA tournament, but he really could have either of these last 2 years. Just had a really, really stacked top of the Sun Belt in his first year and pushed to the final. And then this year, obviously a really wild top of the Sun Belt where anything could have happened. And then Acuff, success as a D2, success as a D1, and then Olin, success as a D2, success as a D1, and super young. So those 3 stand out for me as the 3 best hires of the cycle.
Yeah, I think you're pretty safe betting on the Kyle Smith
or the 3 hires that I was most impressed by. Maybe they don't end up being the 3 best because maybe they don't. I'm not sure if these are like the 3 highest upside hires. I think Hodgson is probably the highest upside of the 3.
But the 3 that you look at and you're like, yeah, like these will work.
These are the 3 that I look at and say, I don't think they could have made a better hire in terms of getting a guy that they know is going to operate the program at a high level and has potential to lift it to even greater heights.
Hovde to me is great because for a couple of reasons. One, like at this point, you're making a pretty safe bet with the Kyle Smith and what is going to become Todd Golden tree.
Well, yeah, I mean, there were a couple coaches off that tree that got jobs this year that we're going to get into.
Like all these guys have been phenomenal. They're very forward thinkers, and I think Hovde's probably the same way. I mean, that we talked about that Florida staff. You were all over this Florida staff this past year, Sam. But yeah, like I just think that
I think there's more future head coaches on that staff, by the way.
Yeah, we've talked about that
like
too.
Carlin Hartman can get a job at some point for sure. Corey McRae as well, and I think without a doubt John Sapphire, because I think he's the youngest on that staff right now. He's kind of been like the analyst. He's like the guy who was the biggest analytics nerd of that staff, I think.
Yeah, but
they just hired Dave Klatsky. So I think that Sapphire, Hartman, McRae, Klatsky, those 4 guys, again, that's going to be another one of the best staffs in the country.
Yeah, I think, with Hovde specifically though, like he's 36 years old. Like he's probably going to be too good for Columbia at some point, and will get a better job. But if you're Columbia, like you haven't had a lot of like recent success in that league. So hey, like why not hire a guy who is 36 years old, really smart, was on one of the elite staffs in the country, has been around some other really elite coaches, and is probably, one of the guys in the industry right now who like understands where college basketball is headed and is currently as like a state of the sport. So, Florida ran, great offense. They obviously did a
He was
really
the
good job of
offensive
evaluating
coordinator.
talent. And, I think, like I said, betting on that tree at this point is a guarantee.
Yeah, and he's the offensive coordinator. That was the thing with Hovde.
Yeah.
Obviously, also
number two
was
offensive
on the staff the last time Columbia was good. He was on that Kyle Smith staff.
Ooh, that's an interesting note.
So I think that again for Columbia's sake, like again, I'm not sure if they could have made a much better hire. There's like a box that's left unchecked though because he has not been a head coach, and that doesn't mean he's not going to be a successful head coach. I think he will be, but again, what is success at Columbia? And I want to get into that, and then I also want to get into Penn hiring Fran McCaffrey because I think that these two Ivy League jobs, the first two Ivy League jobs to hire outside of their family or outside of to not do an internal promotion, because the last Ivy League coaching change was John Jakes doing the getting promoted when Brian Earl left for William and Mary last year. But before that, there hadn't been a coaching change in the Ivy League in like 8 years. So this is new blood in the league. Fran McCaffrey, Kevin Hovde. I think both of these hires are good hires and for completely different reasons.
Yeah.
I think everything you said about Hovde, I'm with. The Nerdball coaching tree, the Kyle Smith coaching tree, it hasn't failed. Golden's done an excellent job. We've seen all the other coaches from that tree, just some really, really good assistants as well. There's another one from that tree there's another 2 coaches from that tree that just got a job as well that we're going to talk about in a minute after we do this with the Ivy League. But then you look at and 36 years old, as you mentioned. At the other side of the coin, there's Fran McCaffrey, who is a successful Division I head coach at a very high level. I wouldn't say he was like amazing at Iowa, but he was very, very, very good for a long time, considering he kept the job there and he made a bunch of NCAA tournaments. He is, I believe, the winningest coach in Iowa history.
What he did, sorry to interrupt, I don't think people realize this. What he did at Iowa is like 65th percentile outcome for a tenure there. Like,
honestly,
yeah, sure,
probably higher than that.
Huh?
But at the end, regardless of that, like the idea of hiring Fran McCaffrey is completely different from the idea of hiring Kevin Hovde at Columbia. If you're at Penn and you're hiring Fran McCaffrey, you're hiring a 65-year-old coach because you need to win now. I don't know if they need to win the Ivy League in year 1 or in year 2 or even really win the Ivy League. That's more of an arbitrary. It's not arbitrary, but it's more of like the idea of winning the Ivy League rather than actually going out there and winning those 2 games in the Ivy Madness tournament. But this is a statement of Penn saying, like, we missed Ivy Madness these last 2 years. Like, that is not the standard of our program is higher than that. The standard of this program is winning Ivy League championships. We're going to go out there and get a head coach that has been successful at every level, who's taken all these different schools to the NCAA tournament with the expectation that he brings us to the NCAA tournament, and he does it rather soon. He's able to retain Ethan Roberts, able to retain AJ Levine. Both of those guys, it looked like we're headed in other directions when Donahue got fired. Obviously, Sam Brown commits to Davidson. We'll get into that when we talk transfer portal stuff, because I love what Davidson's been doing. So you lose Sam Brown, but Penn a little more active in the transfer portal than the rest of the Ivy League. You bring in TJ Power. That's a it's a big name addition. We'll see how it works out in the Ivy League. I think there's a good chance it does. But Penn isn't hiring Fran McCaffrey to finish fourth. Like, they're not hiring him to make Ivy Madness. They're hiring him to be at the level of Yale and Princeton over these last couple of years. Now, obviously, the goal being making the NCAA tournament, but like, we on this podcast understand how fickle that can be. But the idea of hiring Fran McCaffrey is you're hoping that within the next couple of years, you are operating at the level of Princeton and Yale, because that is what the Penn program should be. It's what the Penn program was for decades, under Dunphy, under Chuck Daly. And it's definitely a statement of a hire in the Ivy League. I think someone said it's the biggest splash in the Ivy League since Tommy Amaker. It's as big. It's probably a bigger splash than that. Would you think?
Yeah, I think
But I also think it's Penn. It's Penn saying, like, Steve Donahue made one NCAA tournament. I think Steve Donahue is a good Ivy League basketball coach. He was kind of blindsided roster wise when Dingle left, and he thought he would have three guys. He thought he would have four starters come back. He only had one, I think, or maybe two in 23-24. Then he had some injuries, and then Perkins leaves, and you get just in a funk as a program when something like that happens. So they made it was the right time to move on. I hope Donahue finds a spot somewhere on some staff, because he's definitely a good enough basketball mind to be contributing. But the results weren't there, and Penn's making this hire because they need results to keep to keep the donors donating to that program, really. And McCaffrey is a big splash. I was a little bit surprised, but again, I'm not, like, it's up there as one of the top hires, because I'm not sure. I remember Dave Classy and Andy Toole being in the conversation as well. Like, those would have also been really, really good hires. So it's probably, and I look at McCaffrey and I say, all right, this is Penn saying we need to be at the top of the Ivy League. And then Hovde at Columbia, like, Columbia's the only program that's never made Ivy Madness after Dartmouth made it this year. It would be a pretty Herculean task to make it in year one, I would say. Mm-hmm. But like, once he does make Ivy Madness, if it, like, assuming that happens, like, that's a big deal. That's a big deal at Columbia. And he's also a guy that at 36, as you mentioned, is probably still climbing the coaching ladder. And with the connections that he'll have outside of the Ivy League, he'll be able to climb the coaching ladder in a maybe a little bit different way than some of the other Ivy League coaches have been climbing the coaching ladder, I would say. So I think it's a great hire. I don't think the hire is saying, all right, we have to win the Ivy League. It's saying, all right, we're going to build this thing, and we're gonna try and make Ivy Madness. We're gonna try and do what we did the last time the program was good. And even at that point, they didn't win the conference. So
yeah,
I think Hovde's got a really, really difficult task, but I think he's up for it.
Yeah, quickly on Fran, I think, Fran always, what he did best at Iowa was, he would take, whether it was, a post NIL, I understand that they didn't really do great, but, Iowa still wasn't pulling in fantastic talent or even above average talent before NIL. And, Fran was taking these guys that, were maybe thought of to be, local kids or just like under recruited from anywhere. And, they won a lot of games, often finished, I feel like in the top 35, top 30 in KenPom, made a lot of NCAA tournaments, won, whatever it was, the COVID year, and got a 2 seed with Luka Garza. I think, him at Penn, not only is he going to his element in terms of the fact that, he graduated from there and Penn isn't his alma mater, but I think he can recruit a similar level of talent that he was doing at Iowa, and compete for, the program's goals more often. Like, you don't have these huge national expectations at an Ivy school that you do at a Big Ten school. And I think Penn is perfect for Fran because he could take these under recruited local, like, Philadelphia kids and, DC kids, Baltimore kids, whatever else is in that area, and he can take those kids and he can develop them in house and hopefully keep them around for a couple years.
The tough thing about that job is you're not just it's not just about finding under recruited Philly kids or under recruited Northeast kids. It's you have to find kids that get into the school.
Yeah, that is true. That is true. I'm sure he'll be in the Chicagoland area often, as is the rest of that league.
Yep. But yeah, good thoughts, especially in a league where the degree means more than any other league in the country. So obviously they've had problems retaining talent in that league compared to in the last like 2 or 3 years than they had previous to that in the NIL era. The degree still does mean more than the rest of the country. So maybe you are able to retain a little bit more than you would at an average mid-major, and kind of keep developing talent the way Fran has done so well. He brought Tristan Spurlock. He brought in Ben Luber, who was a prep coach in that area, and he brought in Ronald Moore, who was a star for him at Siena as his assistant.
Yeah.
All right, we're 40 minutes in, and we've talked about 5 hires.
6.
What was the 6th?
5.
What was the 6th?
No, you're right. It's 6. I'm wrong.
All right, I do want to go back to the Todd Golden, Kyle Smith tree for 2 more.
Okay.
The first one being Mike Magpayo to Fordham.
Yeah.
Friend of the program, Mike Magpayo, which I think this was up there as one of the, like, this could have been in that tier of the best hires. It just kind of felt a little out there. Like, didn't really, it didn't feel like a natural name that would be in the conversation at the beginning. But that's a really, really hard job. And this is a guy who has been places that are really, really, really hard to win. And he's won there. Obviously at Columbia, he was on that staff with Golden and Hovde and Kyle Smith, and he won. And he kind of helped build that program to the best that it's been in the last however long. He was also at Campbell for a few years. So he wasn't. I don't think he was at Columbia when they were, when they had their best year. But it's still like being part of a staff that ended up having that. And then UC Riverside is a place where nobody had won, and he goes and wins almost 60% of his games, over 60% of his games in conference play, finishes top 3 in the league 3 of his 5 years there. And now he goes to a place that hasn't won much either. So I think it's a really good, it's a really outside the box hire for Fordham to kind of go all the way across the country to bring in a guy who obviously spent time in New York, but is a California guy. Has been recruiting California kids, has been recruiting out there. It's a little outside the box, but he's been really successful at places that are really tough to be successful at. And he's only 45 years old. So I think it's a really good hire for Fordham.
Yeah, I think that's what makes it so, so intriguing and overall a good hire. It is like, hey, like you're a program in a conference that, a lot of programs have more resources than you do. And, you're probably not going to be able to compete with, the top of the A10 resources wise ever.
I'm going to say this. It's not just probably. They cannot compete with the top of the A10 resources wise.
Yeah, I mean, you know the league way better than I do. But, why not go hire a coach who, not only has been in New York as part of, the Columbia staff, obviously, but has now won as a head coach at a place where, nobody did. Like that's, kind of the whole point of the hire is like, hey, let's go find a guy who did what people thought was, impossible in quotes. And, let's see if he can do it again here. I'm not saying that Mike Magpie is going to go win the A10 or, do anything of that sort. But, I think he proved at UC Riverside that he could win basketball games at a program where people didn't win basketball games.
The one thing I'll say about this is like, I'm not sure I would have fired Keith Ergo. Like, I get the decision.
Yeah.
But the guy's 2 years removed from the best season in 30 years at that program. He had a couple whiffs. He had a couple whiffs in the portal. But also some good moves. I guess it's just like you drop 51 spots in Ken Palm, then you drop another 49. And there's a trend there that you kind of want to nip it in the butt before it possibly gets worse. But I kind of thought they bottomed out and were going to get a little bit better. But like possibly I'm saying this because of like a little bit of personal bias towards
I mean, do you also
Ergo
think,
and that, and
I mean, do you also think it could be the fact that like, maybe Fordham doesn't, maybe Fordham genuinely did not think that like Keith Ergo was bad and like wanted to keep him around, but one of those situations where you think you have a definitive upgrade and you got to kind of see.
The thing about that was that Magpie wasn't their first choice.
Who was?
Rob Senderoff.
Okay. I stand corrected then.
Or at least as far as I'm concerned, Senderoff was their first choice.
Hey, I mean, it's not the worst job in the A10.
You sure about that?
I mean, there's another coaching change that we have to discuss in the conference whose school has like almost closed down.
Oh yeah, you're right. That you're right. I forgot that school was in the A10.
Yeah. Come on, we were talking about their pool earlier today.
The other hire in the Golden Tree, John Andrzezik at Campbell. I don't have as deep of thoughts on this one. Good move. Like, not sure what they could have done better. I was a little surprised this job opened. But like McGeehan was, I think, coaching in the last year of his contract. They stumbled bad at the end of the year. They were probably losing a bunch of guys, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, sure. But, yeah, good hire with Andrzezic. Defensive coordinator for that Florida team.
Yeah, it's not a superb program. But yeah, I don't have really many thoughts on this one. Golden Tree. So
Blind trust.
I don't know if we're to blind trust with the Golden Tree yet, but definitely with like the Kyle Smith tree and like I guess kind of de facto.
I mean, Andrzezic coached under Kyle Smith.
Okay, blind trust
at Washington State.
Blind trust.
He was a student manager. He was a student manager for him at Columbia. He was the Dobo at Columbia and San Francisco. So like, it's not just.
I just think that like having a coach. I don't know how much Andrzezic was involved in the X's and O's stuff with Florida, but
he was the defensive coordinator.
Okay, yeah, that's probably a good sign then. I just think in a conference like the Big South, where the resources gap is like
the CAA.
Excuse me, the CAA. Not the Big South. It used to be in the Big
South. Very
South.
different.
I just thinking like it's really valuable in conferences where most of the schools the resource gap is not super large to have a guy who's a good X's and O's.
To be fair, the resource gap is pretty big in this.
But like some of those teams in the CAA are so bad.
The middle of the CAA doesn't have a huge resource.
Like after the top 5 or 6, it gets
top
really
of the CAA is operating at a very high level.
Yeah, like again, like you're not going to compete with Wilmington, Charleston. I mean, this better than I do, but like Hofstra. I'm just naming pro.
Wilmington and Charleston are the two.
Yeah, but like. I think X's and O's in mid-major leagues can take you pretty far,
especially in March.
Yeah.
I'm gonna let you kind of go ahead here and give
Eric
me
Henderson.
I wasn't gonna go tell you to talk about Eric Henderson. I was just saying, give me like 2 or 3 hires that you really liked.
I mean, we haven't really talked about Phil Martelli at all.
Did you? Yeah, obviously. Is that one that you really liked?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of out of the box, but he knows how to acquire talent. And, like, I think a program at VCU that has, like, really, really good resources, he should do very, very well there. Like I mean, look at the roster he's already put together this year.
You got more?
Like this could be sick. I mean, yeah. So Martelli Jr. I don't think Drake could have possibly replaced Eric Ben McCollum, but like I think Eric Henderson is just like about as good as they could have done. Like he wins basketball games. Like that roster's already looking competitive for this year. I don't know if they can just seamlessly go right back to being at the top of the league, but that athletic department has made very good hire after very good hire. So
he's young too.
Yeah, Henderson finishes top 3 in this league in the first year. It wouldn't surprise me that much. You go look at what he did at South Dakota State. They finished 137 in Ken Pop this year, 138 last year. He had them 81st in 2022 when they had Baylor Shireman, and they won 30 games. Like, yeah, that comes from a good program and is going to another very good one.
Do you have a third that you like?
Let me just look through our list here to kind of go over this real quick. Yeah, I mean, I like UC San Diego promoting internally with Clint Allard.
We'll talk about the promotions.
Yeah, I know that's kind of a different sort of case, but he's been with Olin a long time.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to go over the two that you kind of talked about. Martelli, like, sounded like they really wanted Richard Pitino, which that was never going to happen for them, considering some of the other schools that were courting him. But to be at VCU and to like the talent that they're bringing in, already a bunch of guys from the Bryant team and a bunch of really talented transfers, freshmen coming in as well. They're able to retain Christian Furman, Brandon Jennings as well. So I think there's a good blend of talent that he's building up at VCU. Like, the guy can coach. Like, the guy can, no doubt about it, coach basketball. He's got a really good staff behind him too. Chris Cole, Ryan Daly, probably forgetting some people. He's young. He's 43. He's been in a bunch of different places in the Northeast. And like, I don't look at this and say like it's a total slam dunk, considering like maybe the resumes of the guys that VCU had been hiring. Like Ryan Odom had a lot more on his resume by the time he got the VCU job. But I don't really think it's a like I think it's a good move. I think Phil Martelli Jr. will win at VCU. But I think a lot of guys will win at VCU. I think Phil Martelli Jr. Is a good hire, will do well there. Probably not the only guy that could do well there, but a guy that will do well there without a doubt. So I'm going to say good hire. And then Eric Henderson, I'm with you on this. Like, what could like anything was going to feel underwhelming for Drake after what just happened.
Like, we were going over candidates in like January for this job, and we probably spent 10, 15 minutes talking about it, and we just both came to like the realization of like, oh yeah, like there's no other Ben McCollum.
Like, and I think what I said was, do you just hire Eric Henderson and say like, okay?
Yeah, no, we kind of landed on Henderson,
and like, is it even like an okay? Like, this guy's won a lot of games.
Yeah, he's a good coach.
The fewest games he's won in a full season is 19. He's made 2 NCAA tournaments. He brought he recruited William Kyle. He recruited Zeke Mayo. Those were high major players. He recruited. I don't know if he recruited Baylor Shireman. I think maybe he did. Yeah, he recruited Baylor Shireman. So really clearly a good talent evaluator. My question, as it will be with anybody from that conference, is what is it going to look like defensively? We'll see. But really, really weird to look at a successful college Division I coach who's won 30 games in a season, 20 games 3 times, 19, and also gone 16-7, finished in the top 140 of Ken Pom 5 out of his 6 years as a head coach, made 2 NCAA tournaments out of a 1-bid league, developed multiple high major players, including an NBA player, and say it's not like a home run. It's a great hire. I don't know what else Drake could have done.
Yeah, I don't think they could have done better than this. Like, I really don't.
Maybe like the first thing that I did when this hire was like, all right, is there another D2 coach that I look at like that? And obviously, like, there's Jim Crutchfield and that tree, but like, if you don't want to, if nobody's made that move yet, I'm not sure who will.
Like, there aren't guys like schematically that make sense, like Ben McCollum did.
Yeah.
Like Ben McCollum, you knew that could work.
Speaking of the Crutchfield tree, Jordan Fee just got a jump. That might have been in the, I don't remember, something. I feel like there was some news about Jordan.
Yeah,
Fee
it might have been in the Discord.
Yeah.
Also, I forgot one name. For the mid-major guys, Quantus White at Louisiana.
Yeah, I was gonna get into that.
That was
in a
very
minute.
good.
The one thing I will say about Quantus White versus some of the other assistants we've looked at is I don't like Samson Stree doesn't have as great of a track record. Probably just because of how good the culture is there that he's able to retain so many assistants. But I think what they do is incredibly hard to replicate. But good on Louisiana for giving it a shot, hiring an assistant coach, a young assistant from one of the best programs culturally in college basketball. Even if you can't replicate what they do on the floor, if you can get a fraction of
what they do in the locker room,
like if you can get a fraction of what they are culturally, you're gonna succeed.
Also,
at some level.
Quantus is like a really good recruiter too. Like even before Houston, like he recruited Mitchell Robinson to Western Kentucky. That was him.
Right, that was him.
So like I think that'll translate to Louisiana.
Yeah, again, like I don't think you can like replicate the style the same way. I mean, like I guess you can look at like what Alvin Brooks did at Lamar this year, and like is
I mean we don't think that Kelvin's own son is going to be able to do it. So
yeah,
at the same school.
Like I mean, Alvin Brooks has done a great job at Lamar these last couple of years building that program up. I mean, they were 0-18 his first year in the WAC, and they went 14-6 in the Southland this year. And they kind of do a little bit of what Houston does in terms of the just crazy offensive rebounding, good defense type stuff. But like, I just think it's so hard to replicate that versus what Florida. Florida obviously not like replicate, but like the style of play isn't as like just absurd in that way. I think Quantus White has a chance to be really successful, no doubt. But it's not, and I think Louisiana did an excellent job hiring him. Ties to the state. Coached at Tulane from New Orleans, was an AAU coach in Louisiana for a while as well. So a lot of ties there. So that's like again, not sure what Louisiana could have done that would have impressed me more than this hire, but I would probably put it a half tier below the Florida tree. And another there's I think 4 more assistant hires that I thought that I think are good. I'm going to start with Ryan Pannone at Arkansas State. Kind of just feels like same old there. I think obviously going to lose some guys, but I think he'll be able to continue what was going on. He's got NBA experience. He was on staff. He was, I think, one of the guys that replaced Brian Hodgson. But ironically went to USF, where Hodgson is now, and I think replaced Hodgson on Oates' staff. Now replaces Hodgson at Arkansas State. Has a lot of acclaim. Only 40 years old. So I think that's a really good hire there. Pannone's going to be successful in some capacity. I feel like I've said a lot of coaches are going to be successful. Some of these hires won't work. I don't know which ones, but I think the ones we've gone over so far are ones that I like. And then Bill Armstrong at McNeese. Like the one thing you really want to do with this hire at McNeese was kind of find a way to continue the momentum that Will Wade had, and Bill Armstrong was on Will Wade's staff at LSU, and Will Wade loves him. So I get that. The other really fun thing about that hire was that Bill Armstrong was an assistant coach on the teams that Bucky McMillan played on at Birmingham Southern.
Oh,
which is really interesting.
Okay.
I'm like, as long as McNeese kind of has that investment that they've had, or any level close to that, they'll win games in that league. And then Ryan Miller at Murray State. Again, we really don't know like how good of an actual like basketball coach he is. I mean, because he's never been a head coach, but he's been an assistant in a lot of different spots. And he's brought in a ton of talent at Murray State already. So I think they're going to be well positioned. Then there's Matt Brower at Stephen F. Austin off of the Grant McCasland tree, which again was with McCasland for a while. I think that there's a good chance that he does well there. Who knows? It feels, again, a guy that I'm not incredibly familiar with, but people seem to think he's smart. 38 years old, was with McCasland for a while. So those are kind of the assistants that I look at right there.
Yeah.
And then the three, there's 5 promotions, I believe. I kind of split them into 2 tiers of programs that were operating at a really high level and programs that were maybe not operating at an extremely high level, but I get it. The first level,
there's no Jake Diebler.
Yeah, no.
Promotion from a program that was operating at a low level.
Actually, there was one. There was one. There was one, and I'm gonna go to it right now. And
what was it?
That would be Louisiana Monroe.
Oh yeah, Phil Cunningham.
Promoting Phil Cunningham.
Okay.
I don't know Phil Cunningham. I don't know anything about Phil Cunningham aside from looking at his resume. But Phil Cunningham won 35% of his conference games in 6 years at Troy and was an assistant for this Louisiana Monroe team that was really bad. So I like, maybe, who knows? Some people seem to think he's good. I don't know enough about him to like say I would unequivocally not have made that decision. But it doesn't. This on the surface, it's not a hire that I would have made. Then the two at like the programs that were not operating at an incredibly high level, but I get the promotion, especially in the circumstances of both of these programs. St. Francis, Rob Krimmel retired after they announced the move to D3. Like no one is going to take that job. And again, you did just win that league. Yes, you finished fourth, but you won, and that's an incredibly difficult place to win. So, okay, fine. Big break for Luke McConnell is his name, the assistant. Happy for him. I might catch a game that he coaches next year. Who knows? Again, like I don't know who I would have hired if you're not promoting an assistant there, and that's a staff that really, really loves that place. But again, like that program was not like a perennial contender in that league, so I see I see why it wouldn't. Like if that program were staying in the NEC, they wouldn't be making a coaching change. So, like, I think you can't really even evaluate it off of that. It's just one to evaluate in a weird way, where it's like, yeah, that'll probably work at D3. Who knows? If McConnell is indeed the coach that's going to go into D3 with them, who knows? And then John Perry at Navy, again, another staff that impossible place to win. I think the only time they've made the NCAA tournament is when they had David Robinson, who should not be at Navy. But Perry's been there for a long time. Ed DeChellis retired. Perry had spent the last 23 seasons coaching or playing under Ed DeChellis. So that's pretty crazy. Again, not a program that had been operating at an incredibly high level, but a program that is incredibly hard to operate at an incredibly high level. And the fact of the matter is they were doing a little better than I thought, honestly. So yeah, good. Not sure what I would have done there.
A take the checks, take the losses job in the Patriot League is tough.
I mean, it's really they've actually won more games than I thought.
I mean, they were like semi-competitive this year, right?
No, like they've like in the past 5 years, they've actually had 4 winning seasons in that league.
Oh. Yeah, I mean,
but
tough place
then the three that I felt were like total no-brainers in terms of like keeping the program momentum going. You're not going to find anything better. Clint Allard at UC San Diego, Ali Farouk-Manesh at Colorado State, and Brian Peterson at South Dakota State.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Brian Peterson's a guy that people speak very, very highly about. So that one made a lot of sense to me.
All right. Let's talk about a couple other hires. Ones that honestly there were two hires that kind of completely blindsided me and that will have a lot to prove to me. Those two
I think I definitely know one of them.
Sacramento State hiring Mike Bibby.
Yeah.
And Florida A&M hiring Charlie Ward.
Okay. The second one I didn't have on my bingo board.
Okay.
But
the thing for me about Florida A&M is that they did this to themselves. They should have had a 5-year contract with Patrick Crary.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't. We'll get into that. I don't really have anything to say about Charlie Ward. That's a name. That's a big, big name in that area. So who knows? Who knows? Obviously, he was, I think, a high school coach there for a while and probably did pretty well. I don't know. All it says on Wikipedia is the program improved since Ward's arrival. I I don't know what that means. One of these days we'll find that out. And then Sacramento State Mike Bibby, like I think he was in the NBA at some point as an assistant. No, he wasn't. What has he been doing for the last couple of years?
He got like fired from like a high school job, didn't he?
I think it was one of those fake schools.
Oh, great.
But like what exactly is the I am so confused by this hire. It does really feel like a kind of skip the line type hire. But like that's a big name in that area as well.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna I don't know who Sacramento State was looking at.
And like they supposedly have resources.
I mean, they made a really, really good football hire.
Yeah. Who was it?
The UNLV coordinator.
Not Barry Odom. He got the
Brennan Marion.
Ah, okay. Yes. People speak very highly of him.
All right. Then
can I say one that was weird to me?
Go ahead.
I don't know if weird's actually the right word here, but Daniel Robinson at North Texas.
It caught me off guard for sure.
Like, okay, Daniel Robinson has been an assistant at a bunch of different places. Houston from 2010 to 2013 before they got good. Loyola from 2013 to 2015 before they got good. And then Iowa State from 2015 to 22. So he went through
an assistant at Iowa State 2 different times before they got good both different times.
So he was an assistant under like 3 different coaches at Iowa State, right?
Damn, hold on. Let me
Hoiberg, Prom, and Otzelberger.
No, not Hoiberg.
Hoiberg left like right before.
He was under McDermott, and then he was under Prom, and then the first year of Otzelberger he was there, according to Wikipedia at least.
Hold on, I'm fact checking this. McDermott, dude, what?
2008.
Okay, the first time he was there. Okay, that makes more sense. So yeah,
I guess like he was part of some Prom staffs that did really well there. But like those were Hoiberg's players, weren't they?
Really well is a subjective term.
I mean, they were top 20 in KenPom twice.
Yeah,
3
yeah,
times.
they were. And then they cratered into the center of the universe.
But yeah, like weird hire. Has been a successful head coach at Cleveland State, I would say.
Yeah, he's done well at Cleveland State, and listen, I'm not gonna sit here and pretend like I know everything about the Cleveland State program. It was one of the worst jobs in the country before Dennis Gates took it, and I don't know when Robinson got the job if it was still viewed like that. Like, I don't.
One thing about this hire was they were in a really difficult position, and I don't know who they could have gotten that was better. Because it was very late in the cycle after Ross Hodge left for West Virginia.
Yeah.
The name that you would want there. The names that you would want there are guys like, say.
Yeah, I mean it's a good job. There's nothing that comes to mind right away. Like it takes a lot for me to just straight up call it a bad hire. I don't think this is a bad hire. I just think it's more. It's a little weirder than maybe some of the other ones that we've discussed. But
Yeah,
hey, he won at Cleveland State. They won 20 games all 3
yeah,
years.
and I don't know
just
how
don't
much
know
they
how much
pay
of that
also.
was like. I just don't know how much of that was like, hey, like are they seriously investing more in basketball now after
Again, I don't know.
You're right. Like, that's what I'm saying. I don't know like much about the program. It just felt a little weird to me that
I'm gonna kind of say here's 3 more hires that like.
Can you talk about
like
Darius Nichols at LaSalle?
Yeah, that was one of the next ones I was talking about. Like a little off the board. Like I don't think Darius Nichols is a bad coach. Like he's had like that. Like that's an offense that is going to that offense has been getting better every single year, and like significantly better every single year. He's had good teams there, and that's not the easiest place to win. But like that's also like his hometown school. And like he has no Philly ties. Like I was really surprised that he got that job. It just feels like there should be like some guys that have more connection to Philadelphia that would want that job, but maybe there aren't. Like, who knows what happened? I'm just gonna say, like, I think it takes a lot to win at LaSalle. Like, we all agree Fran Dunphy's an awesome basketball coach, and like he couldn't get that program off the ground these last 3 years. So I don't know what to say about this hire.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't think they're gonna win a lot, but I don't think that's because Darius Nichols is a bad coach. It's just an odd fit, but like maybe that's kind of what they needed. Maybe what they needed was like something from the outside, because like they've like the last guy that they like obviously Dunphy. Not saying Dunphy didn't work, like just couldn't really get it off the ground there. Like the last guy they hired, like before that, had spent all but 1 year of his life in Philly in Ashley Howard, and it went pretty disastrously. Obviously, like there's a difference with like Dr. John Giannini was not a Philly guy. He's a Chicago guy, but coached a little bit of time at a D3 near Philly. Was successful at was like decent enough at Maine. Had some really good years there. So I guess like they're like, and obviously Giannini had some really good years at LaSalle. So again, I think it's just an incredibly difficult place to win. And maybe they kind of just wanted to get out from having the Philly guys that the last 2 times haven't exactly been awesome hires, haven't exactly worked out the way that they hoped. Obviously, Speedy Morris did a good job there when they were in the MAC, and then they moved to the A10, and they struggled when he was the head coach there.
What would it take for you? What does it take for you to just like straight up call something a bad hire in college basketball? Because like I can think of like 3 hires over the last 4 cycles.
I mean,
including this one, where.
I think I would probably call Mike Bibby a bad hire.
Yeah, that I do too. I mean, I just like. By the way, I looked it up because like I knew there was something. He was like fired from a high school job for sexual abuse allegations.
Oh, like.
And like
definitely a bad hire.
Nothing came to it, but like he was fired for it.
Definitely, just okay.
He coached at Hillcrest Prep in 2019. 10 games.
All right. The next hire that like I was a little confused by, I would have just promoted Shane Nichols at Radford. Instead, they hired Zach Chu.
Okay.
I can't say it's a bad hire because like it's very forward thinking.
Yes.
Very forward thinking. Maybe arguably too forward thinking. Considering how little like actual like college coaching, there's no college coaching experience. He was chief strategist at SMU this past year, which I don't know what that means exactly. I just know like he was a big he
it's a fancy way of saying, oh hey, he did our analytics.
He did analytics for the Pacers, he did analytics for the Mavericks. He was a G League assistant for a few years.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't really know like what I would like. Played at Richmond for Mooney. He's 32 years old. Like this could be them like catching the next big thing. It could be. But like I think it's far more likely that it's a little bit of an overthink. Maybe it's not.
I like
Maybe it's not, and this is the new wave.
I like it.
Like I don't know how this like it's not the hire I would have made, but I would not be surprised if this like really works. Like I'm just gonna say like if this move like is a home run and we're talking about Zach Chu in 2 years as like a guy that's really rising, I don't think I would be incredibly surprised. Just considering like, but this feels like a really high ceiling, really low floor hire. And good on them for taking the risk, but I thought they had an option in-house that was a little less risky. What are your thoughts?
Okay, so first, before I say my thoughts, what do you a program like Radford? What do you think Radford's like? What do you think their team goals are? Or like program goals, maybe is a better way to say it.
Be competitive and like I can't say win the Big South because High Points.
Their 99th percentile is winning the Big South, right?
Yeah.
You're in an unfortunate spot in the Big South where you have a team that has a way bigger budget than everyone else. And it's like the only way to really counter that is to hire this like forward-thinking genius, analytic offensive guy. And like that's kind of what they're trying to do here.
There's High Point, there's 50 feet of shit, and there's everyone.
Yeah,
are you basically saying?
No, I'm not saying Radford is a bad job or anything. I'm just saying.
No. My point is, are you saying that we're gonna have a movie and Brad Pitt is gonna play Zach Chu?
Hey, maybe.
I would. By the way, I would so go for college basketball Moneyball. That would be like the greatest thing ever for me.
Who is it? Like Nate Oates?
No. It's got
starring a TI-83.
It's gotta be at a place where it's got to be something like this. Like that would be a really fun movie if it works. Like again, this could really work. Who knows? It just feels really out there.
I like it.
Like, I think it's a swing that I really respect the risk taking because I think it's a very high ceiling move. But I also think like there's a darn good chance like he's just not ready. Like,
no, I think that's a possibility.
Like he's 32 years old, and as far as I can like. as far as I can tell, the last time he was in an AAU gym was when he was playing AAU. Like, he's never coached college basketball, aside from one season as like the sixth, as like the fourth or like the fifth dude on the bench at a high major program that had a mediocre season. Like, so the experience factor is like, I don't know. Maybe he has been in AAU juice. Maybe I just don't know anything about this guy's life. But like my point being, there the experience. Maybe it's the right idea and a little too early for it. Maybe it's the wrong idea entirely. This is like one of the hardest hires to evaluate. But I can't believe we just talked for like 10 minutes about Zach Chu at Radford.
I'm sorry, you had a line there that made me laugh.
What?
Oh, no, I was letting it to you after.
All right. The next hire that like was a little bit odd to me, and I'm probably gonna have to be a little careful about what I say here. Dan Giroux at Iona, like he's really smart.
Oh, why?
Like, he's really smart. Like, I've gotten that from everybody that I've talked to.
I meant like, why do you have to be a little careful?
But like, oh yeah, because like,
he's
it's a program that I cover very, very
That's good
close.
enough for me.
Like, it's a program I cover very, very closely. And, like, straight up, I would obviously not have fired Tobin Anderson.
I think that's like the problem. Like, I don't think that
like
Dan Giroux is a bad hire.
I don't think Dan Giroux is a bad hire. It is also not the first name that would have come to mind had like if they were having a search.
Yeah.
But like again, like I think this is again forward thinking and NBA assistant to like, the fact that they are hiring a GM at this level of college basketball. And Craig Moore, like Iona's plan is to be operating at just a much higher level than the rest of the MAC. And maybe this gets them there. The problem with this hire is not Dan Giroux. It is interesting. It's certainly not the name I would have come up with. But maybe it's just that I wouldn't have come up with him because I didn't know who he was a month ago.
Yeah, like listen, he's friends with Magpie. That's good enough alone for me. And second of all, like he's probably gonna bring a lot of money with him to Iona, which is, you obviously can speak about this way better than I can, but Iona's a program that wants to be
that's the idea here.
Iona wants to be one of like the best like program resource wise in that conference. And
they want to be the best program resource wise in that conference.
Yes.
They want to be operating at a higher level. What'd you say?
And this is a move that allows them to be that.
My question is like, why couldn't they just have done this with Tobin?
I think like we know that answer based on like our conversation with Sage a month and a half ago.
Yeah, no, like I get that. It just like I totally understand that side of it. I still think like they shouldn't have fired him.
No, I don't think he should have been fired at all. It was like one of the most undeserving firings that I've ever seen in college basketball. And if I had to bet, like Tobin is going to be a head coach somewhere probably in the next 2 years.
Now, my other thing is there's now so much pressure on Dan Giroux. Like, you have to win this league. Within like,
yeah, and I mean,
Like if they don't win the league within 2 years, like what did you fire Tobin for?
Is the roster he's putting together a league-winning roster? Like I have no idea.
Well, it's a league. They'll lead the league in 6'7" to 6'9" stretch fours.
Because like
they have not come close to finishing their roster.
Okay, because like Iona
we'll see what happens. We'll see.
Iona made the back title game, was like very clearly trending upwards in the second half of the year, and
they were
set to return
Reeves, Jai, and Mundi.
Yeah, and then like possibly like Patterson and Menard.
Now Patterson left like a month, 2 months.
You're right.
And like they were also like they got better the moment he left the team.
What does Clarence have eligibility yet left?
No.
Okay, I didn't think he
was also kind of not playing extremely well down the stretch.
No, but like you had that core returning with like Gavin Hightower,
and DeAndre Lindsay,
who we like. So yeah, it was just it was weird. Like I think one of those cases that maybe hey, like Iona just wasn't the place for him, but somewhere else will be. I'm very confident in that.
All right. We still have we've been here for an hour and a half, Jonathan.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have to go through like all of these.
We don't have that many more. We don't have that many more.
Quickly, like Josh Pastner was not like. Listen, I'm not going to call it a bad hire because Josh Pastner has high major coaching experience,
and he's won a lot of games.
Like, and he's won basketball games at places, but I do feel like you could have done better than.
My thing is like, could they have? Did they seem like did they get turned down by Hodgson?
Like, who was like the first name that came out?
Stansberry.
Yes. Okay, that would have been a bad hire.
But like, here's the thing: Josh Pastner, like, won 70% of his games at Memphis,
and
then, he only made one tournament at Georgia Tech, but like, he can be a good coach at a high mid-major level. Like, it's just it just feels so uninspiring to me because like I'm not big on the retreads.
That's like kind of what it feels like. I'm sorry, but it feels very Mike White to me.
Interesting.
Like he might have a good year, but he might have a good year. He might have 2 good years, but like it doesn't overall feel like a sustainably good hire. Which, by the way, like we criticize Penny Hardaway a lot. Penny Hardaway has won a higher percentage of his games at Memphis than Josh Pastner has.
Penny Hardaway also got a lot better talent at Memphis than Josh Pastner did.
Funding does wonders.
I want to talk a little bit about the SWAC carousel.
Dude, this is where I call it quits.
No, we're not done.
I'm kidding. I mean, you already
before we get there, any thoughts on Doug Davenport?
Like, not really.
That's a promotion.
I just don't know much about it. Like
I think I don't know who else could have been in play there, especially considering that is a coach in Scott Davenport that earned the right to name his successor.
Fine, I'll do it. I'll coach UC Riverside.
I think when you get to a certain point, you have coaches that have earned the right to name their successor. Scott Davenport's one of them.
Oh, Rob Summers was an interesting hire to me.
Who?
Rob Summers.
Wait.
He got hired by Cleveland State.
Oh, yeah.
Robinson. Just like,
I forgot to even think about that.
Totally not the Mizzou assistant that I thought could get a head coaching job.
Yeah, C.Y. Young is on staff at Miami now, which is a really good hire for them, probably.
Not to say it's, not to call it a bad hire at all. It's just totally caught me off guard.
Do we have any more non-SWAC hires to talk about? Oh, yes, we do.
There was Oral Roberts, right?
I'm going to talk a little about Bryant.
Oh, yeah.
Sure.
Where's he from? Is he
Jamie and Christian? He was coaching overseas the last couple of years.
Really?
But he won. He made 2 tournaments at Mount St. Mary's. He recruited. I think he recruited Jalen Pickett at Siena. Left Siena after 1 year.
What do you do at GW?
They were not very good.
Okay.
Again, I'm not sure what the Jalen Pickett situation was at Siena. He might have already been committed before Jamie got there, because Jamie was only there.
Went 41 and 24 the last 2 years overseas.
Yeah, but good stuff overseas.
I mean,
overseas is a really, really difficult place to coach, because those jobs get turned over so often.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's probably makes sense that he wanted to come back to a program where he knows he can win. I think he can win at Bryant.
Yeah.
And he's still super young. He's 43 for a guy that he became a head coach at 30. How many 43-year-olds do you get that have experience, that have 10 years of Division I head coaching experience? 10 years of Division I head coaching experience and international head coaching experience, and was on a staff, and was on Shaka Smart's staff there, and played for one of the all-time great coaches in college basketball that nobody knows about it, in Jim Phelan. He was Jim Phelan's last senior class, or the last senior class that played entirely for Jim Phelan at Mount St. Mary's. 830 wins, Jonathan, and you've never heard of him. But yeah, Jamie and Christian, almost 150 wins as a Division I head coach, and he's 43 years old, and he's going to a job where he will have more resources than most, if not all, of his conference. He has won at similar levels. The only place where he didn't he won 63% of his conference games at Mount St. Mary's. I thought he could have been a name that the Mount would go for last year, but they obviously didn't, and they're really happy with what they did too.
Yeah, I'd say so.
I think Jamie and it's not a name that got me excited, because I was hoping that they would hire somebody that I knew, honestly. To be completely honest, someone that I knew, or somebody somebody that's been in the Northeast the last couple of years.
Yeah.
The fact that Jamie hasn't been in the Northeast, it's I don't know him. He's been overseas since I've started covering the Northeast. So, but yeah, I think he's a good coach, at least for this level.
Yeah.
I don't see this as a disaster. I also don't see it as a holy crap. I think it has potential to be a really good hire, though. Especially, I think it's a good move for Jamie to kind of get back to college coaching. At a place that he knows he can win.
Yeah,
because he's still young enough to climb the coaching ladder again if he wins enough.
Yeah, if he does well.
It's just
he's young enough to make people like forget about the GW tenure.
Yeah, and a good way to do that is by nobody else really winning a ton of GW either.
Hey, Chris Caputo, Miami candidate. People forget.
Yeah, Caputo he's got a good team coming for next year though. So maybe Jamian doesn't look quite as good after next year. We'll see though. I mean, I guess GW did win 20 games this year. Went 9-9. So yeah, I guess GW's teams have been better since Jamian left, but like that's a story for another time. And then Oral Roberts.
Yeah, I have no thoughts.
I legitimately have zero thoughts on it. Like,
this definitely is the hire that like this podcast knows the least about.
All right, there's 3 more before we get into the SWAC carousel.
Oh, 3 before we get into the SWAC?
And all 3 of them are successful non-Division I head coaches. The first one, the first one is Tim Bergstrasser at Denver.
Yeah, from MSU Moorhead.
The coach at MSU Moorhead. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like really young guy. Won a lot of games, made NCAA tournament all 3 years that he was the head coach. So I can't say that I can't say I don't like this. Wait, he tore his ACL 3 times? Oh my God.
Jeez.
That sucks. And then there's Andy Bronkema. This one seemed to get people really excited. He's been the head coach at Ferris State since 2013. And he is he's a national champion. He's been to the Elite Eight multiple times. He has won over 70% of his conference games. So I think that's like, again, that's a good move. I don't know a ton about it, but 41 years old and a national champion at a place that it seems like he really built, that he really kind of helped build up. Yeah, that's a good hire. And then the third one is Kevin Carroll at Lipscomb. Kevin Carroll went 35-22 over 2 seasons at Trevecca Nazarene. Now, he was also a head coach at Maryville for a bit, but he was an assistant under Lenny Acuff at UAH. I think he played for Lenny Acuff at Barry. Is that true? Yeah, he was recruited by, but didn't play for more than 1 year. Lenny Acuff at Barry. Was an assistant for 1 year at Huntsville, was an assistant for a few years at Lipscomb. Was a head coach pretty young at Maryville. And then at Trevecca Nazarene, like, okay, this guy was probably in line to like be a head coach at after Acuff at some point. I don't know much of it. I don't know much about it, so I'm not going to say anything that I don't know. All right.
SWAC.
Unless I'm forgetting anyone.
Don't believe you are.
I think we're on to the SWAC carousel, which is wild. Jonathan.
It is.
So the first domino that fell in the SWAC was Landon Bussey leaving Alcorn State for Chicago State. Chicago State's not in the SWAC. But I was very impressed by Chicago State being able to pull off that hire, get a D1 successful head coach. Like, Chicago State's head coach last year was Scott Spinelli. Scott Spinelli had like no business being the head coach at Chicago State. He's a Northeast guy who'd been like a career assistant at at a lot of different places. So like I'm glad that like they got a hire that I feel makes more sense at Chicago State. Maybe like a little bit of a raw deal considering Spinelli only got 1 year there, but like I can't think like that was a job that like he kind of backed into that job because he was an assistant under Gillian and he got promoted. Like I have a feeling like Chicago State, like Northeast guy, spent his entire career as an assistant for a long time, 58 years old. Like I was literally like at a Chicago State game this year. They played at Lemoyne, and I was like Scott Spinelli looks like he's coaching, like, and I mean this in an endearing and in a complimentary way. He looks like he is coaching. He looks like he is meant to be coaching, like Catholic school, high school basketball, like winning like Catholic League titles in like random school in Massachusetts or something like that, or like a random Long Island Catholic school. Like he. So Chicago State hiring a SWAC. Like Chicago State is like it's south side of Chicago. I think it's an HBCU. Is Chicago State an HBCU, Jonathan?
Don't believe so.
I
could be wrong.
It's maybe it's not, but like it is like
it is actually.
Yeah. So like
I don't know why I didn't know that.
Scott Spinelli had never coached at an HBCU. Like maybe the exact opposite of an HBCU is a NEPSAC school. And Scott Spinelli coached at the beginning of his career at some NEPSAC schools.
Jeez.
So like getting a guy who's been successful as an HBCU head coach in Landon Bussey, that was really impressive hire, especially considering the funding that that Chicago State has in those facilities. And then Alcorn State hired Jake Morton, an assistant from Florida State. That's kind of the least the least intriguing hire of the SWAC cycle, I would say. I don't really have anything to say about that.
Mm-hmm.
All right, to the craziness in the SWAC.
Yeah,
Otis Hughley, who, if you have never looked at this man's Wikipedia page,
didn't we go over this like last summer?
Yes, he has the greatest Wikipedia page in the history of college basketball coaching. I am telling you to look it up. Like Scott Spinelli has an awesome Wikipedia page, like a lot of random places that he was a coach at. But man, Otis Hughley, like this is unreal. The places that he was a coach at. Resigned, was not very good there. He won under 50% of his games in conference play, won 37% of his overall games. They hired Dante Jackson from Grambling, who that was a surprising hire for me because I don't understand how the SWAC works, but he's made the NCAA tournament. He's what?
That's just a great line. I don't understand how the SWAC works.
The SWAC had like 3 guys leave for like I think the SWAC had multiple guys leave for jobs in that league, and like I don't know like what the hierarchy of jobs in that league are, but I wouldn't have thought Alabama A&M was a better one than Grambling. Clearly, it is.
We need a SWAC expert. If there's any SWAC experts out there, we invite you on the pod.
I'm pretty sure anyone that would be considered a SWAC expert would probably already be coaching in that league.
Expert's a loose term in this situation.
Should we just get the guy who runs the Mississippi Valley State account?
Yes. Yes. That's a good idea.
SWAC preview with the MVSU admin. Write it down.
I'm not gonna say it, but isn't that like someone that like runs another like account?
I know, like yes, it is.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Like that's by the way, that is like a totally attainable guest.
Oh,
Like,
yeah. If I'm thinking
like-
of the right account, then for sure.
Like I know exactly who that is, and like I've been talking to him for like 4 years.
I'm gonna text you right now and keep going, but
Yeah,
I'll text you and you can confirm who this is.
Okay. Wait, there was one hire that we forgot to talk about. Yeah, you're right.
Okay,
there's
right.
a hire we forgot to talk about.
What?
Ronnie Thomas at Longwood. It's an assistant that got promoted.
Okay.
People seem to like him.
Okay.
Yeah, by the way, that is who it is.
Okay, so then
I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, it's because I muted my computer.
Oh, dude. Okay, let's continue with the SWAC because we need to finish.
Dante Jackson. So Dante Jackson leaves Grambling, and Grambling hires Patrick Crary from
Florida A&M.
From Florida A&M. 2 coaches leaving for jobs in the same league. And by the way, I think Crary's like an excellent hire at Grambling. Like, I'm not sure if they could have done better than that considering the circumstances. I mean, he's 41. He's won in. He just finished. He just finished 10-8 in that league. In his first year at a program that basically was begging him to fail in every way. He won a lot of games. He won 213 games between 2 schools that I've never heard of in the NAIA. So great hire for Grambling. And then Florida A&M, as we mentioned, hired Charlie Ward. Jonathan, I think we've gone through everything. Let me just make sure that I didn't miss anything. Let me just make sure I didn't miss anything.
We've now discussed every coaching change.
Hold on. Let's make sure there wasn't one that we missed. Jackson, Pannone, Davenport, Christian, Andrezic, Bronkema, Bussy, Summers, Farouk Manesh, Hovde, Bergstrasser, Henderson.
We definitely at least mentioned all of them.
Oh my God, High Point.
Oh, we don't even have this in here.
No, we don't. High Point. That was I would have I think they made the right decision.
I think they did too.
But man, a High Point search would have been fun.
Yeah, I mean, that school obviously has a ton of money. So, also,
any non-D1 coaching changes? Any non-D1 coaching changes you want to discuss?
None that I know of.
I'm trying to work on the NYU scoop. Trying to figure that out as Dave Klatsky leaving for.
Oh, also didn't really get to discuss it. I know you mentioned it, but I'm pretty happy with the Ryan Miller hire and was before he started putting together this roster. I'm excited to actually sit down and try to really evaluate all the pieces that he's put together here. But it's a McDermott assistant. I think he should do pretty well there.
All right, Jonathan. This was a behemoth of an episode.
Holy cow! What a great episode too.
This is I think this might be our most sicko episode ever.
Yeah, we got really got into the weeds here. But
this is why if you don't like this episode, you don't like Brackets, Bubbles, and Bit Stealers.
Yeah, off season's not for you, unfortunately.
I'm not even saying off season, just in general. If you don't like this episode where we talked about just some of the most random stuff in college basketball, then you're not that's not what. Then Brackets, Bubbles, and Bit Stealers might not be the podcast for you, because this is the type of stuff that we love.
Yeah, getting deep.
We also love the high major stuff. To be completely clear, I think we give better analysis on the high major stuff since we know it. But this is also.
I mean, there are currently 363 Division I teams in college basketball.
No, 364.
Who is the 364th?
Until St. Francis goes down.
Oh, dude. Well, they're going to go down.
Not this year.
Do they have one more year?
One more year.
Oh, I didn't realize that. Okay.
Well, we talked about their coaching change. Of course.
I know. I just didn't realize that like they were staying for one more year.
Yeah, one more year.
Like when Hartford went down, it was like right away.
No, it wasn't.
It wasn't?
It was absolutely not.
Huh.
They might have stayed. They might have stayed 2 more years.
Really?
Yeah, because they had that one last year in the America East, and then they had that 1 year where they were independent.
Oh, you're totally right.
So yeah, all right.
I mean, like,
Jonathan, take us home.
if you came to hear about Tyler Self and where he's working, you came to the right place. If you came to hear about forward thinkers, you came to the right place. And if you came to hear about the latest happenings with Caleb Grill, you came to the right place. This has been Season 6, Episode 2 of Brackets, Bubbles, and Bid Stealers, and we'll see you next time.